Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Crooked lawyers are freaking out right now. They're in a panic. And why? Because the Supreme Court is about to make a decision on nationwide injunctions. It's about the birthright citizenship lawsuit. They won't decide birthright citizenship right now, but very soon they could decide. And they're expected to decide whether or not judges, and we have some almost 700 of them that are local judges, unelected, are able to stop national policies or not, because that's their number one tool for interfering with Trump's legal authority and the authority to carry out the policies of the executive branch. From Politico, the Supreme Court could be poised to hobble the Trump resistance. The Trump court's decision to weigh nationwide injunctions could dramatically impact how Trump's policies are applied across the country. Because a local district judge, let's say the local district judge, just for the sake of argument, of New York City, has the authority to do things in his area in New York City, in his district. Or I don't care, it could be the land of the Smurfs. In the land of the Smurfs, not throughout the entire United States, that judge can make a decision, and then in that area, if the judge has a finding, they can control that local district and just that area, just New York City. Just Smurfland, not the whole country. That's what these judges have been doing. They're not supposed to be able to make policy at the level of a federal district judge, and that's what they've been doing. One of the most powerful wings of the Trump resistance may be at risk of losing a crucial tool. The Supreme Court on Thursday scheduled oral arguments on a momentous question. What is the extent of lower court judges' power to block a president's policies nationwide? If the Supreme Court grants the Trump administration's request to limit or lift 3 nationwide injunctions blocking his bid to end birthright citizenship, it could cripple the ability of President Donald Trump's opponents to seek and judges' ability to grant such blocks entirely. Federal judges across the country have already applied the remedy to halt key parts of the president's agenda in lawsuits challenging anti-diversity initiatives, cuts to federal medical research, the pause on refugee admissions, and a freeze on nearly all federal grant spending. And another part of this that is so crucial and why I say crooked lawyers is because lawyers do judge shop throughout the country. They'll locate somebody in Rhode Island or Maryland or somewhere specifically in California who they know they've got a judge who will play ball with them, so they'll sue on what becomes a nationwide issue with a preferred judge who's just going to play along with them and let them do essentially whatever they want. That's subverting the entire government in the courtroom of one local judge who was never elected. That can't be right. And it's not right. And it's not constitutional. That's not our government system. Such limits on the executive branch, Trump administration lawyers say, prevent the government from functioning properly. Well, obviously that is the case. And Biden's Department of Justice, Trump administration officials point out, also asked the justices to limit lower courts' nationwide injunction powers. Though the justices didn't take up that request, conservative members of the court have been public about their desire to restrain the broad applications of nationwide injunctions. Conservatives have done some judge shopping as well, particularly in Texas. And they've gotten some nationwide injunctions over the years, absolutely. But it's never been like this before. Almost anything Trump does, some judge teams up with some lawyer and creates a nationwide injunction. Without a nationwide injunction system, some policies like birthright citizenship could be put on hold in certain states while allowed to take effect in others as litigation plays out. The result could be an inconsistent, even chaotic patchwork where Trump could enforce his agenda in some places but not others. Kind of like what happened when Roe versus Wade was overturned. In some states, they had abortion. In other states, they had more restrictions on abortion because it was a state-by-state issue. And that's because the justices might declare that trial judges can enter injunctions that only apply in the geographic districts where they are appointed. Or the justices might restrict trial judges from issuing remedies that go beyond the specific litigants in a particular case. That would mean, for instance, that a group of blue states challenging Trump's birthright citizenship order might be able to win an injunction blocking the policy in their states, but the policy would remain in place in all other states. Because aside from tying up the executive branch, a nationwide injunction deprives the entire country of a legitimate and legal policy. Because that local judge is able to say, oh, I'm going to stop this for the entire country because I said so. I don't want some judge in Rhode Island or Maryland representing the entire country. Let's stick with the whole, let's elect someone to lead the government and Not this other system of let's just let some crooked lawyer team up with some crazy judge in some random state and then make national policy. The country voted for change, and we're not getting the kind of change we voted for. We want much more change than we're getting. And whether we get the change or we don't get the change, that's one thing. But you can't have judges taking over the country. No, that's not like legitimate resistance. That's a coup. Really, a judicial coup. Challengers might still be able to obtain broader relief at any early stage of litigation by having their case certified as a class action lawsuit with a national scope or by other measures. But those types of procedures are a more burdensome and time-consuming path to combat Trump's fast-moving clip. So it's inconvenient to do it the legal way, so we'll just do it any way we can get it done and forget if it's legal as long as we stop Trump. That's not acceptable. But without nationwide injunctions, Trump will win by losing. Because he can lose cases again and again and still implement his policies for most people most of the time, said University of Virginia law professor Amanda Frost, whose work on nationwide injunctions has been cited by the liberal justices. Quote, if he could deport anyone he wants for the next year, and he says he can't get them back, then he's accomplished most of his goal, even if the Supreme Court eventually says he can't legally do it. He's not going to deport 10 million people in the course of like a month or 2 months or even 12 months. There's too many people to do that with. There are no resources for that. And even if we had the resources for that, that would have to be like the entire effort of the entire country. You can't make the entire government unconstitutional and take people's individual constitutional rights away to having a legitimate government elected by the people and say, well, it's easier for us to do it this way. We're just going to use our judge friends. No, you can't do that. Here's where we stand with all this. 3 members of the High Court's right flank have already made clear that they would all but eliminate lower courts' power to issue nationwide injunctions. Last year, Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito joined an opinion written by Justice Neil Gorsuch saying that lower courts would be wise to take heed of the rule that any equitable remedy that they issue must not be more burdensome to the defendant than necessary to address the plaintiff's injuries. And that statement says, hey, if you're a judge, don't go making policy for the entire country. You have an issue in front of you, that's fine. Resolve the issue for the people that are suing if it's legitimate that they get what they're asking for. Don't turn it into the whole country. If 5 people are in court because they have an issue with immigration or an issue with they've been hurt by the government for that issue or this issue, fine, deal with those 5 people. Don't deal with the entire country or a class of 10 million people. You're not that important as a local district judge. That's what Gorsuch and the rest are saying. That's a warning, in other words, that injunctions and other relief should be limited to the named plaintiffs in a case rather than applying across the country. Quote, retiring the universal injunction may not be the answer to everything that ails us, but it will lead federal courts to become a little truer to the historic limits of their office and promote more thoughtful rulings, according to Gorsuch. Judge Brett Kavanaugh has also indicated that the court should review the appropriateness of nationwide injunctions. 2 of the court's liberals, Justices Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor, have also acknowledged that the court may need to address the issue, though they added that the question is complicated and cited scholars who've argued that national injunctions are a necessary judicial tool. When the court hears arguments in a special session on May 15th, all eyes will be on Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Those 2 justices will likely cast the pivotal votes that determine whether to limit the scope of nationwide injunctions, and if so, how. Neither Roberts nor Barrett has offered clear signs of their views on the issue. By pushing the limits on everything so hard, Trump makes it more necessary for everyone involved in the process and all the decision makers to have to own up to reality and say, okay, look, what's your position actually going to be? Are you going to say that the elected president of the United States and his team in the executive branch can't do things nationwide because one judge in Rhode Island or Maryland or Smurfland decides for the entire country that they don't like that policy for whatever reason and it's going to get stopped or delayed for multiple years? In the case of this nationwide injunction on birthright citizenship, whether or not you agree with the issue, it has like 3 nationwide injunctions. So Trump, to move forward, would have to win at each of those courts and in all 3 of those appellate courts. It's ridiculous. Canceling nationwide injunctions altogether, quote, could have real costs, said Rick Hasson, a prominent election law expert at UCLA's law school. Well, where was he in 2020? We could have used him back then. He described a scenario in which Trump's effort to end automatic birthright citizenship is upheld in one circuit court but not another, leaving people in one region of the country, quote, who are going to face consequences for that during that period, sometimes consequences that might not be undone. Yeah, it's consequences for everyone. We have to have a working system. We have to have a constitutional system. Cut it out with trying to abuse all of your authority in every possible area. Should we still have nationwide injunctions? You know what? It would be great to be able to have nationwide injunctions because everyone was looking out for the benefit of the country. Everyone respected when elections took place, and they weren't constantly trying to overthrow the president. That would be terrific. The problem is people come in, they find these little loopholes, and then they abuse the loopholes to the point where they're taking over the government. You can't just take over the government with your abuses of power constantly. We got to get this under control. So no, if you've got a loophole, and even though it would maybe help the country overall, a loophole is only useful like this, a special situation is only useful like this if people aren't using it to destroy the country. So no, we shouldn't have nationwide injunctions. What I think we might ultimately wind up with is a panel of a few judges that come together and oversee nationwide injunctions, and maybe it gets a quicker run up to the Supreme Court. The problem is there's so many abuses of power that the Supreme Court gets case after case after case over this. They're supposed to be doing other things. They have resources, but they're not set up for this. They can't be deciding every matter one after another. Quote, if you don't have nationwide injunctions, when you're talking about a federal government policy, you would have some disuniformity, where a rule might be different in Texas than it is in New York. And that becomes both arbitrary and very hard to enforce, Hassan said. I don't know, it hasn't been the end of the world when it came to Roe v. Wade. It was difficult for a lot of people. I'm not going to take that away from them. But we have to have like a lawful system. We can't just create a system on the fly as long as it helps to push a progressive agenda. Quote, there are about 3.5 million births in the U.S. every year, Frost explained. If the current nationwide injunctions are ruled unlawful, every single one of those families will now have to prove their status or their child's status to get federal benefits or passports for their kids. Many other families would be denied citizenship, and each and every one does not have the capacity to sue, meaning they can't afford to hire lawyers or they can't connect with lawyers. And okay, that is a sacrifice, but we actually have to have a rule of law, not just bring in millions of illegal aliens, and now we're just going to have a different system of government to accommodate the illegal aliens now in the country. Everyone has to change what their expectations are for their rights to be respected under the Constitution. And I also think we have this other big problem they've created where we have these illegal aliens in the United States, or some people with other kinds of status but not the legal right to vote. How are you going to have a whole subclass of people in the United States and not be able to be involved in the government? I'm not saying they should get the right to vote. I'm saying this is a colossal disaster, and we shouldn't destroy our system of government over it. We should tighten up our rules with respect to our system of government. Let people stay here legally who have a right to be here legally, but if they don't have a right to be here legally, we've got to straighten out the government and operate the country under our constitutional system. If we don't do that, we're going to lose our constitutional system. You see how many people are trying to push against our system to try to bring it down because it benefits them with a progressive agenda. And she says abolishing nationwide injunctions would mean a tougher fight for the many groups suing the administration, if only because it would add to the constant legal uncertainty and chaos that sometimes enables Trump's policies. During the time it takes for cases to percolate up to the Supreme Court, the administration would have authority to continue policies and practices that some courts have already temporarily put on hold. Just because they put them on hold, that doesn't mean that was legitimate. That's the whole point. Quote, part of the problem is that Trump is doing so many things that are extraordinary, that lead to litigation, that have to be resolved on an emergency basis, Hassan said. If the court gets rid of nationwide injunctions, it just pushes the issue down the line for a few months in each case, because you'd end up with circuit splits that the court would have to resolve anyway. In Trump's first term, nationwide injunctions frustrated his attempts to ban travel for citizens of several majority Muslim countries and his policy of withholding federal funds from sanctuary cities. During the Biden administration, they halted COVID-19 vaccine mandates and climate change initiatives. They've increased dramatically during the Trump administrations. Even before his second term, slightly more than half of the injunctions issued since 1963 targeted Trump's policies. There were 14 nationwide injunctions against Biden's policies through the end of his first year in office, compared with 64 during Trump's first term. The Biden administration cited conservative justices' previous arguments against nationwide injunctions in its bid to curb the remedy last year. The injunctions also operate asymmetrically, the Biden administration wrote. Quote, the government must prevail in every suit to keep its policy in force, but plaintiffs can block a federal statute or regulation nationwide with just a single lower court victory. Quote, no president will ever like a nationwide injunction, doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican, Frost said. It's a tool to limit executive power. It's not a legitimate tool, Frosty Pants. That's the problem. Frost and other prominent legal scholars have argued that the remedy is simply necessary in our system of government. It creates an entire new system of government where we are ruled by judges that decide policies instead of controversies. Who would want to live that way? Not you, not me. It's not the right thing. It's not the country that we are in. It's not what we were promised in the Constitution. We're taking our rights back. Complete relief in cases challenging policies that cross state lines, like water regulations and immigration policies, require a lower court remedy that also benefits and extends to similarly situated people who aren't involved in the suit. Otherwise, the president can, quote, unilaterally rewrite the law for as long as it takes to get a Supreme Court opinion, according to Frost. So you want to instead let the judges rewrite the law? Does that make sense? Let the judges issue their policy mandates? Make that nationwide and essentially unreviewable? Especially if you do it in more than one jurisdiction? Nationwide injunctions are a tool that are not appropriate for local courts, not even if you live in Smurfland. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.